Bilkel, Apke's story, they declare humans too primitive to fight. Then Earth defied them. Kulia first 30 to 45 second saps important hain. Hook main mystery plus danger plus human defiance Hona Chahi. Talk viewer immediately story main Lakho J. High retention opening hook YouTube retention hook. They declared humans too primitive to fight. They had studied humanity for 200 years. They knew our weapons. They knew our weaknesses. They knew how there were civilizations in the galaxy that had existed for millions of years. They had crossed suns. They had built cities around stars. They had turned barren worlds into gardens and oceans into living machines. And among all those civilizations, there was one truth everyone agreed upon. Humans were primitive. Their ships were too small. Their weapons were too simple. Their governments were too divided. Their species was too emotional. The galaxy had watched humanity for nearly 2 centuries, and it had reached the same conclusion. Earth was harmless. That conclusion was about to become the greatest mistake the galaxy had ever made. The story began on the world of Vera, beneath a violet sky filled with 3 moons. Vera was the capital of the Orient Dominion, the most powerful military empire in known space. Its people, the Orient, were tall and silver-skinned, with 4 narrow eyes and delicate bones adapted to the low gravity of their homeworld. They believed strength came from perfection. Emotion was weakness. Individual sacrifice was acceptable only when it served the greater machine. And above all else, the Orient believed that civilization had a natural hierarchy. At the top were the Orient. Below them were thousands of obedient species. And somewhere near the bottom were humans. The chamber of the Dominion Council was silent as High Commander Valor stood before a holographic map of the Milky Way. Earth glowed in blue. A tiny world. A world the Orient had never considered worth conquering. Until now, the human territories have expanded, said Admiral Serac. Valor looked at him. Expanded. 3 colonies beyond their original system. A few counselors laughed. Valor did not. How many warships? 412. More laughter. Valor finally smiled. 412. That is not a fleet. He turned toward the hologram. That is a warning sign. Serac frowned. Commander? Primitive species become dangerous when they stop believing they are primitive. The room fell silent. For decades, the Orient had studied humanity. They had watched human wars. They had watched humans fight each other. They had watched them destroy their own cities, poison their own atmosphere, and divide themselves into competing nations. To the Orient, these were not signs of resilience. They were proof of inferiority. But something had changed. Humanity had begun to unite. Not completely, not peacefully, but enough. Enough to make the Orient uncomfortable. A human diplomatic vessel had recently entered Dominion space without permission. Its captain had delivered a simple message. We're here to talk. The Orient had interpreted that sentence as arrogance. Now Valor wanted the problem removed. Send the fleet, he ordered. Serac hesitated. To Earth. No. Valor pointed to the holographic map. To the human colony at Helios 9. Why there? Because Earth must understand something. His 4 eyes narrowed. Humanity does not decide where the galaxy's borders are. The order was transmitted. 200 Dominion warships left Vera. They traveled faster than light. They carried weapons capable of tearing mountains apart. Their soldiers wore armor that could survive direct exposure to vacuum. Their commanders had conquered 47 worlds. They had never lost a major battle. And waiting for them at Helios 9 were 6 human ships. Not 600, not 60. 6. The largest was called the UNS Resolute. Its captain was Mara Vance. She was 43 years old. She had gray beginning to appear in her dark hair. She had spent most of her life in space. And when the warning arrived, she stared at the enemy fleet approaching the colony. Her first officer swallowed. Captain, I see them. 200 ships. I can count. Should we retreat? Mara remained silent. Below them, Helios 9 rotated slowly beneath the stars. 1 million civilians lived there. Children, farmers, engineers, doctors. People who had never fired a weapon in their lives. The human fleet had been ordered to protect them. Mara looked again at the approaching Dominion fleet. Then she gave a quiet command. Open a channel. The screen flickered. An Orant commander appeared. Human vessel. You have entered Dominion territory. Mara stared back. This is a human colony. That is irrelevant. No. Her voice was calm. It isn't. The Orant commander smiled. You have 6 ships. I know. We have 200. I know. You cannot win. Mara looked through the window toward the distant planet, then back at him. We don't need to win. The commander frowned. Then why remain? Mara answered with 6 words. Because they're behind us. The transmission ended. For the first time, the Orant commander stopped smiling. The Dominion fleet advanced. And somewhere on Helios 9, children were still playing beneath the evening sky. They had no idea that the galaxy had just arrived at their doorstep, and no idea that humanity was about to teach an ancient empire something it had forgotten, that strength was not always measured by the size of an army. Sometimes, strength was simply deciding that someone else would not be left behind. The Dominion fleet entered orbit at dawn. 200 warships surrounded Helios 9. Their hulls were black and silver, their weapons open like enormous mechanical flowers. The human defenders looked microscopic beside them. Across the galaxy, military observers watched. The outcome seemed obvious. The Dominion had won battles against fleets 10 times larger than the human defense force. 6 ships could not possibly survive. The Orant broadcast a final demand. Human forces, surrender immediately. Mara Vance stood on the bridge of the Resolute. Around her, officers waited. No one spoke. Then Mara pressed the communication control. Negative. The Orant commander stared. You understand that your destruction is certain? Mara smiled faintly. Certain things aren't worth surrendering. What? Our people. The channel closed. The first Dominion weapon fired. Space itself seemed to tear open. A beam of white energy struck the human cruiser. The Resolute shook violently. Warning lights flashed. Shields at 60%. Damage to Deck 4. Captain, another salvo incoming. Mara gripped the command rail. Hold formation. The second barrage came. This time, the human ships scattered. Not randomly. Precisely. They moved in different directions, forcing the Dominion fleet to divide its targeting. The Orant commander watched in confusion. Why are they separating? His tactical officer answered. They're trying to draw us away from the planet. Of course. The commander smiled. Let them. Dominion ships accelerated. Human vessels fled. The battle became a chase. But the Orant did not realize they were being guided. Every human ship moved toward a specific location, a region of space filled with debris left behind by a destroyed asteroid. The Dominion fleet followed. Mara waited. Now, the human ships changed direction. The Dominion fleet entered the debris field, and suddenly, thousands of small objects exploded. Not bombs, mining charges, old industrial equipment, fragments of human machinery. Anything capable of producing heat or metal signatures had been hidden among the asteroids. The Dominion targeting systems went blind. Where are they? Multiple contacts. Lock weapons. We can't distinguish friend from debris. Human ships emerged from the darkness. They fired, not at the largest vessels, not at the strongest. They targeted engines. One Dominion cruiser lost propulsion. Another suffered a communications failure. A third was forced out of formation. The Orant commander stared at the tactical display. They aren't fighting our fleet. His officer looked confused. They're dismantling it. Exactly. The humans were not trying to destroy 200 ships. They were trying to make 200 ships incapable of fighting as one. For the first time, the Dominion fleet hesitated, and that hesitation cost them. The Resolute fired everything it had. The human ship struck again, then retreated, again, and again. Every attack lasted seconds. Every withdrawal was deliberate. The Dominion began to chase shadows. Hours passed. The 6 human ships suffered enormous damage, but they remained alive, and behind them, Helios 9 remained untouched. Across the galaxy, viewers began to understand something. Humanity was not technologically superior. The humans were not stronger. They were not faster. They did not possess secret weapons. They simply understood something the Dominion had forgotten. A battle was not always about destroying your enemy. Sometimes it was about refusing to let your enemy choose the battlefield. Then the Dominion changed tactics. The Orient commander looked at the planet below. Enough. He opened a channel. Human captain, your fleet has delayed us long enough. Mara answered, you haven't reached the colony. We don't need to. A targeting display appeared. Thousands of weapons rotated toward Helios 9. Mara's expression changed. The commander spoke calmly. Withdraw your fleet. Mara stared at the planet. If you do not, we will destroy the colony. Silence. The bridge became completely still. Mara looked at her officers. One whispered, Captain. She raised a hand. The Dominion commander continued. Your 6 ships cannot stop 200. Mara closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them. You are right. The Orient smiled, then surrender. Mara looked toward Helios 9. Then she said, No. The commander frowned. You admit you cannot win. I never said we could. Then why? Mara's voice became quieter. Because you still don't understand. Understand what? She looked directly into the camera. You think we're protecting that planet because it's strategically important. A pause. We're protecting it because people live there. The Orient commander stared. Mara continued. And that's the difference between us. The transmission ended. The Dominion fleet began charging its weapons. Across the galaxy, millions watched. Everyone expected the same ending. 6 human ships, 200 Dominion warships, 1 helpless colony. But then, something appeared behind the Dominion fleet. A single signal, then another, then 10, then 100. The Orient tactical officer froze. Commander, what? We're receiving unidentified transmissions. From where? The officer looked at the display. His face went pale. Earth. The Dominion commander turned toward the tactical display. Earth was more than 11 light years away. No fleet could possibly arrive this quickly. Yet the signals continued. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The officer whispered, Those aren't warships. Then what are they? We don't know. The answer came from the edge of the system. A massive human vessel emerged from hyperspace. Then another. Then another. The Dominion fleet watched in disbelief as the darkness filled with human ships. Cargo vessels. Mining ships. Research vessels. Civilian transports. Old military cruisers. Ships that had never been designed for combat. There were thousands. The Orient commander stared. This is impossible. On the Resolute, Mara looked at the incoming fleet. Her first officer smiled. Earth heard us. Mara nodded. What did they send? The officer looked at the sensor display. Everything. The new arrivals did not attack. Instead, they formed a wall between the Dominion fleet and Helios 9. The Orient commander opened a channel. Human forces, identify yourselves. A voice answered. Not one voice. Thousands. Every ship transmitting at once. We are humanity. The Dominion commander ordered weapons to fire. The first barrage struck the human formation. Civilian ships exploded. Military ships shielded them. Cargo vessels turned sideways to absorb impacts. One old transport lost half its hull, yet it continued forward. The Orient commander could not understand. Why are civilian vessels fighting? Because humans had never truly separated survival from responsibility. A cargo captain named Daniel Reyes watched the damage report. His ship was barely functioning. His daughter had been born on Helios 9. His family was still there. He looked at the planet below. Then he spoke. Keep moving. His crew hesitated. Captain, we're losing pressure. Seal the compartments. We don't have weapons. Daniel looked at them. Then we don't need weapons. He pointed toward a damaged Dominion cruiser. Get us between them and the colony. The crew understood. The old cargo ship accelerated. The Dominion cruiser fired. The cargo vessel absorbed the blast. It broke apart, but the colony survived. The Orient commander watched in horror. What are they doing? His tactical officer whispered. They're using themselves as shields. Why? The officer had no answer, because the Orient had never understood sacrifice without reward. In the Dominion, soldiers died for the Empire. In humanity, people sometimes died for strangers. That difference was becoming impossible to ignore. The battle continued, but something strange happened. The Dominion fleet began losing, not because the humans had better weapons, because humans refused to retreat. Every time a human ship was destroyed, another moved into its place. Every time a communication tower fell, 3 more activated. Every time the Dominion broke, through one line, they found another. The Orient had planned for resistance. They had not planned for persistence. Then the Dominion commander gave the order, destroy the planet. 100 ships prepared to fire. Mara saw the targeting indicators. She knew there was no way to stop them all. She closed her eyes. For one moment, she thought about every person on Helios 9. Then she heard a transmission. Captain. Mara opened her eyes. Go ahead. The voice belonged to a child, a little girl. Her name was Lena. She was 9 years old. Captain Vance? Mara swallowed. Yes. Are you the people protecting us? Mara looked at the planet. Yes. Are you scared? The bridge became silent. Mara smiled. Very. Lena was quiet. Then she asked, Then why are you still there? Mara looked at the approaching enemy. Because being brave doesn't mean you aren't afraid. A pause. It means you stay when someone needs you. The child whispered, Okay. Then the transmission ended. Mara stared at the screen. Something changed inside her. Not courage. She already had that. It was certainty. She looked at her crew. Everyone. They turned toward her. We hold. The human fleet tightened its formation. The Dominion fired. And then the galaxy saw something it had never seen before. Human ships moved directly into the path of destruction, not because they believed they could survive, but because they knew someone behind them would not. One by one, they vanished. One by one, others took their place. And in the darkness of space, the human fleet became something more than a military force. It became a promise. No one gets left behind. The Dominion commander watched his tactical display filled with destroyed human vessels. Yet the planet remained untouched. His weapons were firing. His ships were winning. And somehow, he was losing. Then his communication officer shouted, Commander, what? We have another transmission. From Earth. No. The officer turned slowly. From every human world. The commander stared. Across the galaxy, human colonies were broadcasting. Not threats, not demands. A single message. We are still here. And for the first time in the history of the Orient Dominion, their soldiers heard fear in their commander's voice. Retreat. The Dominion fleet began withdrawing, but the humans did not chase them. That confused everyone. The Orient had expected revenge. They expected human ships to pursue them. Instead, the humans stopped. They turned toward the damaged colony, toward the survivors, toward the ships that were still burning. The galaxy watched as human rescue vessels entered the battlefield. They searched for escape pods. They rescued wounded soldiers. They even recovered Orient survivors. A human medical ship received a Dominion escape pod. Inside were 6 injured Orient soldiers. The medical officer looked at them. They're enemy troops. The captain answered, They're injured. They attacked us. I know. Then why save them? The captain stared through glass. Because we're not them. The Orient soldiers were treated, given water, given medicine, given blankets. No one demanded information. No one tortured them. No one mocked them. One Orient soldier finally asked, Why? The human doctor looked confused. Why what? Why save me? The doctor paused. Because you're alive. The Orient soldier stared at him. That answer would haunt him for the rest of his life. Days later, the Dominion fleet returned to Vera, not victorious, not defeated in the traditional sense. Something worse. Change. The Dominion Council demanded explanations. High Commander Vaylor entered the chamber. Everyone expected him to condemn humanity. Instead, he stood silently before the council. Finally, one counselor asked, "How many human ships were destroyed?" Vaylor answered, "Thousands. And our losses? 31 ships." The counselor smiled. "Then we won." Vaylor looked at him. "No." The smile disappeared. "We lost." Silence. Vaylor activated a recording. The council watched. They saw human cargo ships moving into fire. They saw damaged medical vessels, refusing to abandon wounded soldiers. They saw children being evacuated. They saw humans fighting not for territory, but for people. Then Vaylor showed them the final message from Helios 9. A little girl standing inside a shelter. "Lena," she looked into the camera. "I don't know why they came for us." She paused. "But they stayed." The recording ended. Vaylor looked at the council. "We believe primitive species fought because they were desperate." He took a breath. "We were wrong." A counselor asked, "What are humans?" Vaylor answered, "They are the species that continues after the reason for continuing is gone." Nobody spoke. Then an older counselor whispered, "That is not strength." Vaylor turned toward him. "No." His voice was quiet. "That is something far more dangerous." "What?" "Hope." The word echoed through the chamber. For generations, the Orient had controlled civilizations through fear. They believed fear was the most powerful force in the universe. But they had just encountered something stronger. Humans did not fight because they were fearless. They fought because they cared. That was different. A fearless enemy could be intimidated. A careless enemy could be bribed. A greedy enemy could be defeated by taking away what they wanted. But what could you do against an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for someone else? The Dominion did not know, and that uncertainty changed the galaxy. Within months, worlds that lived under Orient rule began questioning their place, not because humanity told them to rebel. Humanity never did. Instead, humans simply showed them something. Another way existed, a way where strength did not require cruelty, a way where technology did not replace compassion, a way where victory did not mean destruction. The Orient Emperor eventually requested a meeting with Earth. Mara Vance was there. She stood inside the great diplomatic hall of Vera. The Emperor approached her. He was older than she expected, tired. His silver skin had lost some of its shine. He looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "We underestimated you." Mara smiled. "Everyone does." "Why?" She thought about the question, then answered, "Because you look at what we have." The Emperor waited. "And you don't look at why we fight." He lowered his head. "Teach us." Mara was silent. She had expected threats. She had expected arrogance. She had never expected those two words. "Teach us." So she answered, "Start by remembering that every species you rule has someone waiting for them to come home." The Emperor looked down, and for the first time in centuries, the ruler of the Orient Dominion understood what humanity had known for thousands of years. A civilization was not measured by the weapons it possessed. It was measured by what it refused to become. Years passed. The Dominion changed. Not overnight. Not peacefully. Change rarely happens that way. There were rebellions, arguments, wars. Old leaders refused to surrender power. Some worlds rejected humanity. Others embraced it. But something had changed permanently. The galaxy had seen humanity, not through reports, not through military statistics, not through distant observations. They had seen humans when everything was on the line, and what they saw frightened them, then inspired them, because humanity had proven something no machine could calculate. That compassion could be a weapon. That courage could exist beside fear. That weakness did not always make you weak. And that sometimes the smallest force in the galaxy could become the strongest thing anyone had ever witnessed, simply by refusing to abandon someone. Years after the Battle of Helios 9, Mara Vance returned to the colony. The world had changed. New cities stretched across its continents. Children played beneath towers built from the wreckage of the old battlefield. A memorial stood at the center of the capital. It contained thousands of names: military personnel, civilian pilots, doctors, engineers, farmers, parents, people who had died protecting strangers. Mara walked among the names. A young girl approached her. She was older now, much older, but Mara recognized her immediately. "Lena." The girl smiled. "Captain Vance." Mara laughed softly. "You grew. You did too." Mara touched one of the names on the memorial. "Your parents?" Lena nodded. "They're here." Mara looked at the wall. "I'm sorry." Lena shook her head. "They saved us. They should have lived." "Maybe." Lena looked toward the stars. "But they chose what kind of people they wanted to be." Mara looked at her. The girl smiled. "That's what you taught me." Mara said nothing, because she realized something. Humanity's greatest achievement had never been its engines, its weapons, its colonies, its ships. It was this: the ability to inspire another person to become better. Across the galaxy, civilizations began telling stories about Earth. Children of distant worlds learned about the 6 ships that stood against 200. They learned about the cargo vessels that became shields. They learned about the doctors who saved enemy soldiers. They learned about the little girl who asked a frightened captain why she stayed. And they began asking the same question: what made humans different? Scientists studied their biology. Military commanders studied their tactics. Historians studied their wars. Philosophers studied their cultures. But no one found a simple answer, because there wasn't one. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest. They were not the most intelligent. They were not even the most united. Humans argued. Humans failed. Humans made terrible mistakes. They sometimes destroyed what they loved. They were afraid. They were fragile. They were imperfect. And perhaps that was exactly why they were extraordinary. Because humanity did not need perfection to choose courage. It did not need certainty to choose hope. It did not need superiority to choose kindness. And it did not need victory to stand between danger and someone who could not stand alone. That was a lesson the galaxy finally learned. Not that humans were invincible. They weren't. Not that humans could never lose. They could. Not that humanity was destined to rule the stars. It wasn't. The lesson was simpler. When the universe tells a human being that something cannot be done, there's always a chance that human being will look back and ask, why not? And perhaps that question is the most dangerous thing humanity ever invented, because every great human achievement began the same way. Someone said it was impossible. Someone else tried anyway. A few decades after Helios 9, the former Oran commander who had ordered the attack returned to the planet. He was old now. His body was failing. He stood before the memorial alone. A human caretaker approached. "You were there." The old Orant nodded. "I was the one who ordered the attack." The caretaker studied him. "Why did you come?" The Orant looked at the names. "To understand." "Understand what?" He looked toward the stars. "Why you stayed." The caretaker smiled. "Because they were ours." The Orant shook his head. "No." He looked at the memorial again. "That is what I never understood." He placed one hand against the wall. "They were yours because you chose them." He closed his eyes. "And that," his voice trembled, "that is what made you human." The caretaker said nothing. The stars continued shining above them. Millions of worlds turned beneath their light. And somewhere far away, Earth continued to grow, still imperfect, still divided, still struggling, still human. But now the galaxy watched differently. They no longer saw a primitive species. They saw a species capable of standing in front of the impossible and refusing to move. A species that could lose everything and still choose compassion. A species that could be afraid and still be brave. A species that could fall and rise again. The galaxy had once believed humanity would become powerful when it conquered the stars. They were wrong. Humanity became powerful the moment it realized the stars were not something to conquer. They were something to protect. And so the old records of the Dominion were rewritten. The chapter, once titled, "The Primitive Humans of Earth," was changed. Only 3 words remained. They stayed. Because that was humanity's secret. Not strength, not technology, not destiny. Humanity stayed. When others ran, they stayed. When the odds became impossible, they stayed. When fear told them to surrender, they stayed. And when the galaxy finally asked why, humanity had only one answer: because someone was counting on them. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.